Everyone thought he was a lonely orphan, but he turns out to be the strongest archdemon and marries a beautiful white elf. The story starts with a knight who corners a woman in the woods and attacks her with a knife. The girl screams for help before trying to slap him away, but to her absolute shock and horror, the moment her hand touches his face, the entire skin on his head comes off, revealing a grueling layer of red flesh underneath. The knight reveals that he is a sorcerer who wants to cut up and use her pretty face to fulfill one of his spells. Just as he's about to stab her, someone approaches him from behind and grabs him by the head. The sorcerer asks in shock who it is, only for the brown-haired man named Zakin to ask the same question back at him. Zakin tells him that he was trying to get some sleep, but all the shouting in his territory ruined his slumber. The sorcerer realizes Zakin is a fellow sorcerer, and he messed up by trespassing in his territory, so he tries to sweet-talk Zakin by saying that if he lets him go, he will share the powerful sorcery secrets he discovered from his research. Zakin coldly replies that he does not need to learn any magic that requires hurting people and crushes his head in his hands, squirting blood all over the girl, who simply gets knocked unconscious because of the shock. Zakin immediately realizes that he might have gone too far, and has definitely given her some PTSD. He uses magic to clean up the crime scene so that everything reverts to normal. The blood on the girl's face gets off, while the knight gets his face back and lies on the ground dead. After this, he notices that the woman is wearing a cross and realizes that she is from the church, which is bad news because the worshippers are the sworn enemies of sorcerers, and despite saving her, he might be blamed for the attack. Still, Zakin decides it doesn't matter to him and decides to finish the job by translocating her to another village while hoping that the girl will think it was all a dream when she wakes up. He tries to finish his casting circle, but something interferes with his magic, causing it to fail. He turns around immediately to find another very powerful sorcerer named Barb appear in front of him. Barb looks at the strange scene and asks him what happened. Zakin explains that he was just teaching a lesson to a creep who wandered into his territory. Barb disagrees with him about calling the other sorcerer a creep because the sole purpose of sorcerers is to pursue power and other people are just fuel to be used to become stronger. Zakin stays silent at this statement when Barb senses that the woman on the ground has a lot of mana coming out of her, and that they should use it in their magic. But Zakin refuses by saying that he is not interested in sacrificial magic and creates a magic portal again to translocate the girl to a nearby village. He tries to return to his chambers to follow through on his much-needed nap, but Barb insists he has come to Zakin for a good reason. He reveals that one of the 13 archdemons has died, which is enough to get Zakin's attention. The archdemons are the pinnacle of sorcery, and those who earn the title have boosted mana and the power to command lower-ranked sorcerers. Barb explains that the strongest archdemon named Marco, who lived a whole 1,000 years, died, and there is going to be a huge auction for his possessions in his territory. This convinces Zakin to go there, but he's pissed to have Barb come along with him because he knows that Barb's only invited him so he can be a leech and use his money to buy things. They reach the archdemon's territory, which is a bustling city named Kyanoids. It is already overflowing with people who've come for the auction, selling and buying goods while a bunch of slaves sit in a dark alleyway awaiting their future masters. Zakin notices the tight security, and Barb explains that lately, some sorcerers have been abducting a lot of girls with huge amounts of mana to use in his sorcery, which has caused a panic. Zakin wonders why anybody would want to do something so risky and pick a fight against the church, suspecting that they must be planning to summon something big like a demon. The two enter the auction hall and take their seats as the moderator tries to auction off the items to the riled-up audience. Barb points out they are in the midst of a celebrity crowd, which includes some of the most powerful sorcerers who are being considered as candidates for the late Marco archdemon's seat. Zakin asks how the successors are decided, to which Barb replies that the remaining 12 archdemons will debate and decide who the worthiest sorcerer is to receive the throne. Eventually, the moderator hypes up the crowd for the final item in the auction, which is revealed to be a purebred elf, a rare race of magical beings who are closer to gods and nature beings than humans. The moment Zakin lays eyes on her, he is overwhelmed by her beauty and his heart starts racing. The moderator starts the bid at $10,000, and Zakin immediately calls $1 million, which surprises every single person including Barb, who tells him that it is too much money even for an elf and asks what crazy sorcery he's planning to use her for. Zakin merely gives a smile so unsettling that it even creeps Barb out. He immediately jumps down to look closely at the elf and notices a chain around her neck. The moderator tells him it must be there to stop her from escaping, but nobody has been successful at breaking the collar. Later that night, deep inside the forest where Zakin's castle is, he decides to try and have a conversation, but his years of being an incel have made it impossible for him to learn how to talk to women. Before he could say anything, thankfully, the elf speaks up and requests him to let her ask a question. He is immediately struck by the sweetness of her voice, and he tries to play it cool, but instead sounds annoyed when he tells her to ask away. She introduces herself as Neffy, and with sad eyes, asks him how she is going to die. Zakin is shocked over her grave misunderstanding, and he immediately tells her that he is not going to kill her, which makes her believe that she will have a fate worse than death after seeing the torture devices in the womb. Zakin gets embarrassed because he never got rid of the previous owner's things because he was too lazy to. He gives the excuse that they are just for decoration, and insists that even though he is a sorcerer, he has no interest in torturing or killing her for any reason whatsoever. He asks whether she has a family, but she claims that she is an orphan and also a cursed child, but does not explain further. She then asks that if not for sacrificing or torturing, why did he buy her? And because he can't openly simp for her yet, he tells her that she doesn't need to know that. He walks up to her and tells her that they should look around for a room where she could stay. She interprets this as him saying she will pick where she dies, making him realize that this girl was probably enslaved at a very young age and was told all her life that she would be sold to a sorcerer who would sacrifice her, making it the only thing she believes. This reminds him of his own difficult childhood when he was an orphan and had to steal and fight for food, which makes him more sympathetic towards her. He tells her that he wants her alive because he needs her, which surprises her because no one has ever told her that they need her. He then starts taking her upstairs and asks her if she is scared of heights. She tells him that SH will let him hang her any way he wants, but the baffled Zakin yells at her to shut up about torture. She apologizes for her old habit and suddenly slips, but he catches her arm and drags her upstairs. Finally, he opens a room at the top of the tower and claims that she could have it only to be horrified as he sees a guillotine machine and a pile of skulls inside. She gets confused by his mixed signals and again offers her head, but he quickly creates a small energy blast and completely destroys everything inside the room, leaving it empty. They both go inside and Neffy for once seems interested as she goes into the balcony to look at the moon. Zakin is relieved to see emotion on her face, but is disappointed that he can't use sorcery to get the moon for her. Suddenly, Neffy asks whether she could stay in this room and Zakin happily agrees, starting their friendship. Neffy wasn't able to sleep in her room because it was so inhospitable, so she slept by Zakin's throne while he was unable to sleep due to nervousness, as he has never been this close to a girl before. By the time sun comes up, he decides to get some breakfast while Neffy finally stirs awake and folds Zakin's cape, which she used as a blanket. Zakin soon walks back with some breakfast while Neffy immediately greets him with a good morning. It turns out that no one has greeted him before, so he gets confused as to what he should say in return and simply tells her that he got food with a scowl and immediately regrets it. They both belong to the floor gang and start chowing down while Zakin thinks about why he is such a big failure. Neffy notices that he is eating the same thing as she is, which confuses her, and she asks about it. This makes him realize that the food that he is eating is way too plain and only slaves and pigs eat like this. He realizes that he will always be a disappointment and starts eating the piece of jerky again when he suddenly remembers that this is the only food he has ever known in his life because when he was a young orphan, this was all he could afford, and maybe a piece of moldy bread. He wonders what kind of food normal people might eat when suddenly Neffy speaks up and asks permission to cook food for him. This takes him by surprise, as he never imagined he could ever get an anime waifu who would cook him food. He immediately dons his cape and tells Neffy that they are going into the town to get some groceries. They soon call an Uber, but he suddenly realizes that he has no money as he used every single penny to buy Neffy. He immediately acts like a health freak mom and tells Neffy that they are going to walk. He starts thinking about ways to get money and wonders whether he should just threaten the cab driver, when suddenly he hears a bunch of commotion and turns around to see a bunch of robbers robbing the Uber guy on knife points. They start capturing the passengers to sell them into slavery, when Zakin notices that this seems to be triggering Neffy's PTSD, as she also probably got enslaved like this. He decides to show Neffy how cringe robbers are, and uses his magic spell to send a blast of lightning as a warning, which scares the shit out of the goons, who immediately decide to rush him at once. A fat-ass fatty tries to attack him with his axe, but Zakin styles on him by stopping his blow with 2 fingers before shattering his axe into small pieces. He then pretends to punch the goon, but flicks him instead, which is enough to blast him back on top of another robber. The hooligans start crying like little b****s just like any other bully, and call for help, when suddenly a sorcerer emerges from thin air. It turns out that these goons hired the sorcerer to help them, and the hooded idiot immediately tries to scare Zakin by producing a magic circle filled with burning hot flames. But our archdemon is completely unfazed, and swipes away the entire flame wall without any effort. This surprises the hooded idiot, who immediately tries to land a follow-up attack. But to his surprise, his magic circle has been nullified, and now is in Zakin's control, as he simply walks ahead and uses a single finger to bring a lightning blast so extremely strong that it leaves a crater behind at the place where the hooded guy was standing. Then he turns towards the robbers, asking them to come at him, which scares the crap out of them as they start running away. He then turns towards Neffy again, hoping to impress her, and says that she shouldn't be worried about these bullies, as everyone knows they are lame. To his utter surprise, the people near the cab immediately start thanking her for saving them, while the disgusting furry gives him a bag of silver coins as a thanks, and also asks him to give them his protection for the rest of the way to the town. He can't believe that money can be earned this easily, as he remembers that he has destroyed a lot of robbers in his hood, but no one thanked him before, but immediately realizes that it is all because of Neffy, as he looks less scary with a cute girl. On the way to the town, Neffy asks why he helps these people, and while trying to say something smooth, he ends up making a fool of himself once again. Upon reaching the town, he starts thinking where to go when he realizes that he doesn't know anything about the stuff that girls need for daily life. And even if he asks Neffy what she wants, she won't demand anything. He suddenly notices a tailor's shop and decides to head inside alongside Neffy, as the furry shopkeeper immediately gets scared after seeing a sorcerer come in. Zakin is pretty used to this, so he simply pulls Neffy forward and tells the furry to get a dress for her. The furry is entranced by her beauty, but also notices the slave collar around her neck. She acts all cheery and takes Neffy back into the changing room before dressing her up in an extremely skimpy dress which my ex wore when she went to meet her guy best friends. Zakin gets embarrassed and tells the furry to immediately put some clothes on her, otherwise he will burn his shop to the ground. The furry immediately goes back in and soon comes out with Neffy dressed in a beautiful maid's outfit. The furry explains that the dress is made up of high-quality silk, while the boots have healing properties for her. Zakin asks whether she likes the dress, and for once Neffy tells him that she does like it. After buying the dress, they head over next to a blacksmith's place, who also gets scared of him, but feels better after looking at the pretty Neffy. He tells the smith that he wants him to remove Neffy's collar, which surprises the smith a bit, but he looks at it regardless, before telling Zakin that the collar has strong magic and cannot be removed very easily. He then tells Zakin that the collar shouldn't be removed forcefully, as it might end up killing her. He asks what could be the best way to remove it, and the smith tells him to look for the original key. Zakin remembers that even the moderator at the auction didn't have the key either, so it might become a problem. Zakin thanks the smith and gives him some money, but the guy refuses to take payment and reminds him that once he got attacked by a bunch of robbers while he was pulling up to Zakin's crib, and at that time he saved his ass and destroyed the robbers, while the smith and his daughter were too scared to even thank him properly and just ran away. Zakin tells him not to worry about such small problems and leaves alongside Neffy. By the time they get all of the grocery items, it's already evening, so Zakin decides to eat out tonight and takes Neffy to a nearby restaurant. They both sit down together at the table, as food is brought up to them, but he notices that Neffy seems very uncomfortable. She reveals that all her life she has never eaten like this, while Zakin thinks how alike they are in terms of their childhood. He reassures her, and she tastes the small tomato, which blows her mind away. And to thank Zakin, she also feeds him with her own spoon, while Zakin feeds her as they start acting like clingy, love-struck teens. The other customers laugh at them, which makes them insecure, and they quickly leave into the night and head back to the castle. The next morning, Zakin wakes up to find Neffy standing in front of him with a smile, asking whether he would like to have some breakfast. Zakin gets up surprised but happy, asking if Neffy really made food for him, and she tells him that she did, and it's in the dining hall. He starts walking ahead. He is stunned the moment he sees the dining hall, as it looks straight out of a fairy tale, as it used to resemble a graveyard, but Neffy renovated and cleaned it completely. He walks towards the chair only to see a piece of freshly baked bread on the table, which surprises him as they never bought bread. But Neffy replies that she made it fresh for him. He gets really excited to taste her food and sits down while she pours out some tea for him. He asks whether she has eaten already, but she shakes her head, so Zakin tells her to join him on the table. But she replies that she only made food for him, as she forgot to make anything for herself. Zakin tells her to share half of his food, but notices that there is only one chair, so he asks her to sit on his lap. They both get embarrassed, but Neffy finally sits on his lap, as he feeds her from his own hands, while she returns the favor by feeding him some soup as he tells her that they will be eating all meals together from now on. A couple days pass by and Zakin was busy reading books while perched on the stairs in his library, when Neffy comes in and asks what he studies all the time. He tells her that it is sorcery and magic spells that he is learning and points towards some magical figures on a paper. He asks whether elven sorcery is different, but Neffy claims with a sad face that she can't use sorcery. Zakin finds it weird as she has a lot of mana compared to any normal person, but proceeds to show her the basics by drawing a magic symbol and channeling some of his mana inside to create a small bolt of lightning. He then tells her that you can add things into the circle like the time of which the magic will activate, the area it will cover, etc., and the more mana they put in, the stronger the spell is. He then shows her once again by putting some mana into the circle, creating an even bigger blast than before. He tells her that anyone with mana and the knowledge of magic circles can do sorcery with some practice, but tells her that only the original caster can use their own magic circle, unless and until the level difference in between is very high. Then the person with the higher level and mana pool can take control of the weaker person's circle. She then asks why has he been drawing only on the outside of the circle and not inside. Zakin likes the question and tells her that they can draw an entirely different magic circle inside another magic circle, but most of the times either the spell will never work, or the spell will malfunction, causing a lot of damage. Only a person who has completely mastered the control of their mana can create something like this, and this will also make them be able to hijack anyone's magic circle, essentially making them the strongest sorcerer on Earth. He tells him that lots of people have tried, but all of them have failed as it is an incredibly difficult task. He then sits down on his chair, while Neffy asks him what he is going to do with his incredible powers. Zakin thinks about it, but replies that he is just going to try and survive. He continues to tell Neffy that when he was young, he had no money or friends that could help him. He was truly alone in this world who stole to survive, but one day, a sorcerer captured him and put him inside his dungeon to be used as a sacrifice. But just before he was about to be sacrificed, Zakin managed to turn the tables and killed the sorcerer instead. Neffy tells him sadly that she was never able to be that strong, and just when Zakin was going to comfort her, he senses some intruder on the property, which sours his mood completely. He tells Neffy to stay inside and cook dinner while he deals with some of the uninvited guests. The intruders turned out to be knights from the church, while the Lady Paladin uses her sacred sword to slice through Zakin's defensive barrier and walks inside alongside her underlings. Zakin immediately appears in front of the gate with a bang and starts trash-talking the church, which pisses knights off, but the Paladin stops them from doing anything. Zakin realizes that the Paladin looks similar to someone he has seen before, while he notices that she possesses one of the 12 sacred swords that are incredibly strong and a symbol of the church's power. He suddenly realizes that the Paladin is the same girl who he saved the other day by that weird faceless molester knight, and thinks about how he would have killed her if he knew she was a Paladin. Zakin tells them to piss off and uses a basic magic spell at the Paladin, but one of the knights immediately jumped forward with his shield and blocks the attack. Zakin knows that he didn't use his full power, but he was still impressed by the knights. The black-haired shield guy shouts at him for attacking them, but Zakin insults him to his face, angering him as he swings a huge axe at him, only for Zakin to hit him with a magic punch, shattering his armor and blasting him away. He tells them to leave his property immediately, But the blondie doesn't listen and try to swing his sword at him, only for Zaken to snap the sword in half with his fingers, and as he then flicks the man in the head, knocking him out. He puts his foot on the knight's face, and tells the paladin to stay at her place, otherwise he will crush this one's face. She puts her sword down and asks why is he trying to torture them instead of killing them. Zaken replies that if he kills them, the church will send someone else, but if he hurts them, they will tell the story to everyone and people will start fearing his powers. The paladin realizes that Zaken is bluffing as he doesn't want to kill anyone, so she takes her sword out and swears to kill him. Zaken creates a magic circle, but she rushes forward and slashes the circle in half, surprising Zaken with her strength. She keeps running forward while attacking, but Zaken calmly dodges all her attacks and tells her that he doesn't fight women, and also because she reminds him of Nephi. She calls him evil just because he uses sorcery and vows to destroy all the sorcerers, while Zaken calls her hypocrisy out and claims that she is using her powers to kill sorcerers without caring for whether they are innocent or not, which makes her the evil person. The girl gets triggered and rushes forward with an attack, but Zaken dodges and puts his feet on the sword. The paladin is able to get it free and thrusts the sword at Zaken, but he manages to stop it with his magic and grabs it in his hands. The paladin, however, is very strong and simply flings Zaken in the air and towards a tree, hurting his hands. She then immediately rushes forward to finish the job, but Zaken dodges the strike and grabs her blade. To his surprise, she whispers to him that he needs to pretend that he got killed by her, otherwise the church will never let him live in peace and send another stronger paladin to kill him. Zaken asks why he should believe a paladin, and she replies that he didn't kill her men, and also saved her life before. Zaken realizes that if anyone finds out about this, she will die a horrific death at the church's hands. He was contemplating whether to accept the offer when suddenly Nephi came running out towards Zaken. He shouts at her to get back, but he is too late as one of the knights throws his spear at her, thinking that she is a sorcerer as well. Zaken rushes forward and pushes her out of the way just in time, while the spear stabs him in the hand. He takes the spear out when he suddenly feels a very strong presence. The trees around them start moving as Nephi stands up with anger burning in her eyes and tells them that they will pay for hurting Zaken. Suddenly roots start coming out of the ground and catches the knight before lifting him up in the air. Zaken tries to stop Nephi, and when she finally snaps out of it, she is horrified to see that she almost killed all the knights and the paladin as they look at her with fear in their eyes as they finally saw what Nephi was capable of. Later that night, Nephi bandages Zaken's hands as he thinks about how the paladin apologized for getting Nephi involved and left afterwards. He then turns towards Nephi and asks why she didn't tell him that she could use magic. She responds that it wasn't magic, but something called mysticism. Zaken remembers reading about it, but thought it was just a myth because it defies all laws of magic. Nephi continues that she is the only elf who could use this because she was cursed when she was born. She is the only elf who had white hair and was able to talk to animals and trees alike, and because of that people called her a freak and hated her. One day their village got attacked and all the villagers told her to defend the village with her freak powers, but she decided to surrender while the entire village was slaughtered. She tells Zaken that she felt happy when the villagers who tormented her the entire life were getting killed, and then cries about how bad of a person she is to think like this. Zaken, however, tells her that he thinks she did very well, as if it was him, he would have killed all the villagers and the attackers himself. She was expecting him to kick her out of the castle when he realized that she was cursed, but instead, he holds her face and tells her that she will always stay with him as he can't live without her food anymore. Nephi starts crying out of relief while Zaken tries to comfort her. After a short while, Zaken is finally able to quiet her down, and they both sit opposite to each other. Nephi feels pretty embarrassed for crying like that in front of her master, but Zaken reassures her that he liked how talkative she was today, whereas usually she doesn't speak much. Nephi's attention gets drawn to his hands, and she asks whether they are really badly damaged. Zaken finally remembers about his hands, but claims that they don't seem to hurt anymore. He takes out the bandages, and to his surprise the wounds have disappeared completely. He asks Nephi whether this was her doing, but she refuses, saying that she didn't do anything. Zaken realizes that Nephi has a lot of dormant powers, and she must have healed him unknowingly when he was holding her head in his arms. He thanks Nephi for healing him, which seems to stun her for a bit. Zaken asks whether everything is okay, and she replies that he has never thanked her before. That's why she was caught off guard. Zaken feels terrible as he realizes how mean he must have looked to never say a word of thanks when she was cooking and taking care of him every single day. He immediately apologizes to her, but she claims that he is her master and is never really supposed to say thanks or sorry. Later that night, Zaken rests on his throne thinking about the long day that he just had, when he spots Neffy standing behind a pillar. She looks at him with an embarrassed face and asks whether he would like to sleep with him. This catches Zaken off guard, who doesn't understand why would a beautiful woman like her ask him to sleep with her. He confirms with her whether she knows what she is saying. Neffy innocently replies that there is only one bed in the entire castle and that two Zaken has given to her so that she can sleep comfortably, while he stays all night on his uncomfortable throne, and she thought it might be more comfortable for him to sleep in the bed with her. Zaken thinks about how pure Neffy is and then tells her that he stays up on the throne all night to make sure the barriers are maintained and no enemies try to sneak in the castle, hoping to catch him off guard. She quickly understands the situation and sits down on the floor, asking him to lay his head on her lap so at least he can be a bit more comfortable than he is on the chair. Zaken can't believe that he is being offered a lap pillow, and knows that only an idiot will refuse a lap pillow, so he gladly accepts. He asks why is she so nice to him, and she replies that even after knowing that she is cursed, he still told her that he wanted her by his side, and also accepted his mystic powers, which she can't thank him enough for. Zaken tells her that she never needs to thank him for anything before putting his hands on her cheek as he asks whether she wants to learn how to use magic properly. He claims that from what he saw today, he knows that she doesn't have a lot of control over her sorcery, but the amount of mana she released was incredible, especially considering that a huge chunk of it was subdued because of her collar. He can't promise that learning basic sorcery would help her gain control over her mystic powers, but at least she will be able to defend herself better. She asks whether she would be able to protect him from trouble as well, and Zaken calmly replies that she already protected him from those knights from the church today. She thanks him for accepting her as his apprentice and tells him that a lot of people might not be able to understand him and think that he is cruel, but she knows and believes that he is a kind person who cares about the weak. She immediately hugs him, while this moves Zaken so much that tears form in the eyes of one of the strongest demons in this world as he thinks how nice it is to have someone in your life. The next morning, while he was having his tea, Barb walks in the room and asks whether he is fine as he heard the news that Zaken was attacked by the church. Zaken claims that he was attacked, but the knights were very weak. Barb tells him that he also heard that one of them had a sacred sword, and Zaken tells him that the paladin girl did have the sword and was pretty strong as she destroyed a couple of barriers around the castle. While they were talking, Neffy brings him some tea, and he suddenly remembers her from the auction spilling his tea. Zaken quickly uses his magic to catch the spill, while Barb asks whether it's the same elf that he bought for so much money. Zaken claims that it is when Barb asks why hasn't he sacrificed her yet. Zaken replies that he is not a barbarian, and instead he has taken her as an apprentice. Barb sits down again as he realizes that with an elf by his side, Zaken can probably use every single kind of magic known to man. Zaken feels annoyed that he is talking about Neffy as an object and claims that it was Neffy who scared the knights away by her magic. Barb remembers the mess he saw outside and asks Zaken whether he is after the archdemon's seat. Zaken thinks about how he only needs the key to free Neffy, but lies about it and replies that he does want the seat. He knows himself that he is unlikely to be chosen because he started learning about magic just 10 years ago, whereas other sorcerers have been studying about magic and its properties for hundreds of years and have amassed a great knowledge which he can't even come close to. Barb finally gets up and leaves while Neffy asks whether he is Zaken's friend. Zaken immediately declines by saying that he doesn't have any friends, but Neffy claims that he seemed to be having fun talking to him. Later that day, he takes Neffy out to fix the magic barriers that were destroyed by the paladin in the hopes that she can learn something from it. After that day, Neffy started learning about sorcery while doing all the household chores as well. She learned all about the basic magic circles and often cooked food so nice that Zaken wanted to kiss her hands. He also tired training her in her mystic arts, but unfortunately, that didn't seem to be going as well, as she still didn't have a lot of control over it. Soon, Neffy learned all the basics of sorcery, and Zaken told her that she knows enough magic to do some basic spells. She gets overjoyed by this praise and tells him that she will make a wonderful dinner as a celebration. Soon a month passes by since he started living with her when a magic bird tries to enter Zaken's barrier, but he stops it using his magic circle. The two-headed bird calmly delivers a small envelope to him and flies away immediately. Zaken opens the letter only to find that he got summoned by the 12 archdemons to present himself in the city of the sorcerers. The next morning, he goes down to the city and enters an underground lair which was used by the previous 13th archdemon as his castle. He enters a huge door only to find it completely jam-packed with all kinds of sorcerers. The moment he presents himself, one of the archdemons speaks up and Zaken immediately feels the immense pressure and the intensity of their magic power as they overwhelm him completely. They start talking about how young he is, when Zaken pulls himself back together and with a fake bravado asks the archdemons whether they brought him here just to waste his time or do they have something to say to him. One of the archdemons commends his bravery for speaking to them like this and cuts to the chase, telling him that he has been selected for the position of the 13th archdemon. Immediately after that, the archdemon produces a red magical crest in the air with such an immense amount of mana concentrated inside of it that Zaken starts feeling sick. The archdemons claim that this crest belonged to the previous 13th archdemon, and if Zaken accepts, it will be passed on to him alongside its power and prestige. Zaken looks at the archdemons and asks why they have chosen him, as there are sorcerers who are much older, more knowledgeable, and even powerful than him. The archdemon agrees that Zaken's powers are still very weak, but the fact is that he has some latent abilities which are so powerful that none of the sorcerers here, including the archdemons, can kill him. He continues that Zaken was only 8 when he killed a very well-known sorcerer who was not weak by any means. Even though Zaken was a child with no magical power, he was able to understand the flow of mana and the technique behind the magic just by observing it once and produced an even more powerful spell to kill the sorcerer to earn his freedom. The archdemon tells him that his sorcery is so unique and powerful that he can overpower any sorcerer in the world and no one could do anything about it. He can take anything he wants from them and none could stand his powers. He continues that if Zaken is so strong at such a young age, then he will definitely become one of the greatest sorcerers to ever exist in the world when he grows older. Zaken looks at them and asks if he is so strong, then he could just kill all of them and take all their belongings. This makes the archdemons laugh, as one of the old archdemons tells Zaken to be mindful of where he is standing. She claims that Zaken is strong indeed, but if he tries to cross them, they will take every single thing Zaken holds dear, let it be his home, his friends, his family, or anyone he ever knew, till he is left alone and forgotten with nothing to his name. He immediately thinks about Neffy and how he couldn't put her life in any danger. He starts thinking about his options as he knew from the day that he became a sorcerer that a normal life is something he cannot have. But becoming an archdemon will mean that he will be diving into a darker path altogether. He knows that Neffy doesn't deserve to walk this path as she will just suffer because of this darkness. The archdemon pulls him out of his thoughts and asks him for an answer. Zaken looks at him and puts a condition for accepting the title. The archdemon asks what more could he want than the title of one of the archdemons, and Zaken replies that he wants all the possessions of the previous archdemon. The sorcerer agrees to the arrangement and produces the crest before Zaken absorbs it on his hand, officially becoming the 13th archdemon of the world. That night, he returns back to his castle, where Neffy was happily cooking him a lamb stew which he loves. Neffy happily greets him but notices that something seems off about him. He claims that he went to meet the other archdemons and now has the property of the previous archdemon who owned Neffy. He produces a key and immediately unlocks the slave collar on Neffy's neck, which falls to the ground immediately. Before she could even process what was happening, he tells her that he is now the 13th archdemon and has no further use of her before kicking her out of the castle. Neffy sits down on an empty alleyway in the middle of the night, unable to process what just happened to her. She gets up to go back to the castle, but finds the broken slave collar, remembering that her master, who told her that he would never leave her alone and wants her to stay with him forever, just kicked her out like a stray dog. Neffy wanders around unable to think of a life without her master, when suddenly a girl ends up calling her over and asks whether she is okay. Neffy looks up slowly only to realize that the girl is none other than the Lady Knight who attacked them a month ago. Neffy was in such a terrible state that she believes that the paladin is here to take her life, but instead of running away, She accepts her death with open arms and tells the knight to kill her as she has no intentions of living without her master. The paladin starts backing off, telling Neffy that she has no such intentions, but Neffy walks up to her, asking whether it's not the duty of angelic knights to kill the sorcerers, and claims that she is an apprentice to a sorcerer, which means she should be killed as well. A bunch of people roaming around on the streets end up overhearing this conversation and walk in to check what's happening. Because Neffy came to the market often to get groceries, most of the townspeople end up recognizing her and think that the paladin is harassing her because Neffy works for a sorcerer. The paladin tells Neffy to shut her mouth because she is making her sound like a serial killer when she is not. But before she could say anything more, the winged woman who helped Neffy get a dress ends up arriving on the scene and tells the paladin to back off. The knight immediately tries to explain that she doesn't want to do any harm to Neffy, but the mob is already riled up and not willing to hear any excuses. They start trash talking and calling names to the paladin, which turns so bad that she ends up breaking down on the floor and starts bawling her eyes out. Thankfully, Neffy steps in and tells everyone that the paladin hasn't really done anything to her, which silences the crowd as the bird woman asks Neffy why does she look so terrible then? The paladin starts crying and shouts at the crowd that she hasn't done anything and was just worried to see Neffy alone in an alleyway. The bird woman ends up taking her to a local tavern where the paladin regains her composure and introduces herself as Chastel. The bird woman calls herself Manuela and asks whether she seriously didn't do anything to Neffy, because she seems to recognize her. Neffy stops Manuela and tells her that even though they were fighting, Chastel never tried to hurt her, and it was one of her subordinates that attacked. Chastel thinks about how the guy who Neffy attacked with her mystic magic got so much PTSD that he can't even look at a tiny plant now as he fears they will eat him. The tavern cook gets Neffy some food, but she claims that she doesn't have any money for it. Manuela tells her to eat up as she will take care of it, but tells Chastel that she will have to take care of her own food. Neffy tries the food, and it makes her remember the lamb stew that he cooked for Zakin with so much love, and tears form in her eyes immediately. She starts crying completely while Chastel asks whether she did something with a worried look. Neffy tells her that she got kicked out by Zakin and starts bawling her eyes out as both Chastel and Manuela run over to comfort her. Manuela manages to console her, and after finishing her food, Neffy tells them about what happened. Chastel tells her that she thought he was a half-decent person, but now it seems like he was just using Neffy for his own benefit. Neffy, however, defends Zakin and claims that he is not that kind of a person. Manuela asks what happened before he kicked her out, and Neffy tells them that he came home and told her that he has become an archdemon. This surprises both of them, and they explain to Neffy that this entire town was more or less run by the 13th archdemon, who was a pretty decent person. But after his death, things started getting bad and girls started getting kidnapped by sorcerers to use as a sacrifice.